Are you ready for the best introduction you've had this morning?
Oh, absolutely. I haven't had a good introduction yet this morning. So,
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, and before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Are you feeling
mhm.
stressed out, perhaps overwhelmed by trepidation and anxiety? Then go ahead to guidedhypnotic.com and download your free guided hypnotic meditation. That's guidedhypnotic.com. All right. Here we go. Ari Gronich, the performance therapist, has a vast background in the holistic and medical healing arts. His training has spanned over 5,000 hours and over 25 years, putting his hands on more than 25,000 people. Ari began wellness programs with 3 major corporations, ushering in a new paradigm for employer-based healthcare. Over Ari's career, he has helped Olympic and Paralympic athletes break world records, win gold medals, and earn legacy championships. Ari is dedicated to taking his experience and using that to educate the next generation of doctors, therapists, trainers, and healers. His mission as a visionary thought leader is helping to create a society designed from the ground up to be in harmony with nature, thereby eliminating the causes of dis-ease and shifting the systems of medicine from an emergency mindset to a proactive, preventative lifestyle and health mindset.
Wow, that
All
is that is the best intro I've had
all day.
all day.
All day. I knew it. I knew it. It's a gift, isn't it? It's a gift I have.
Yeah, I'm going to carry you around with me in my bag
Yeah.
for anywhere I go, just so you can do that often.
Often, or you could just take that recording and use that and pay me residuals.
It's not as much fun. Carrying you in my bag is a little more fun.
This is true. This is true. So, what is going on? Welcome to our conversation about transforming the world, as it were. The purpose we both are aligned in is making a difference and doing what we can. I know we'll talk about. You have a podcast as well that is dedicated to a very similar thing that I'm doing here, and the purpose is to offer opportunities of different thinking, different thoughts, and so forth. So a little background, let's catch up. We met with Jessica Brace at a video boot camp she was doing, and we hit it off and just have been on and off connecting and supporting each other through the years. So what's been going on? Share your story. Who is Ari, and how did you get to where you are and where we're going?
Yeah, in life, we are the sum total of our experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my experiences in life have been quite a bumper of roller and hills and movement, trauma. So how did I become who I am? Trauma.
Hey.
I'll be really, really clear. The traumas are the things that have always propelled me forward.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was being raped and molested as a child, to having a brain tumor and being told that I would never get well, that I would gain weight until I was dead, to actually dying for 26 minutes, waking up in a hospital room a couple days later and saying, I think I need to be a healer.
Mm.
The traumas are really the things that have made me who I am. And what I've kind of learned from that, which is really fascinating to me, is that those traumas don't have to stop you. They can propel you forward if you think about it in the right way.
And what were some of the aha moments, like you woke up after the third major trauma and were like, maybe it's time to be a healer. How old were you? And then how did you start going down that path?
Yeah, so I was 18 years old. I had just graduated high school. I actually had become a master herbalist and aromatherapist while still in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Parents who had Amway in their house all the while I was growing up. And so I got associated with herbs and medicine. And I was an athlete growing up, a gymnast and martial artist, baseball player, tennis player, long distance cycler. I did all kinds of sports, but the sports and the things that I was doing, I had to continue to go to chiropractors and therapists to take care of injuries because my body wasn't producing testosterone and HGH properly. So I wasn't recovering well. And so at 18, I went whitewater rafting, got heat stroke, sunstroke, and went into anaphylactic shock, stopped breathing, and I was dead for 26 minutes before they brought me back.
Wow. Do you remember any of that 26 minutes?
No. I tell people there was no light. There was no tunnel. There was
You don't remember.
that I remember, but I woke up with the clear answer that the doctors had no idea what to do with me. And I was a medical mystery, and I needed to become a healer so that I could heal myself. You know, great theory, right? But as soon as you get into school, into the arts of that, you stop remembering that it was about you, that you did it, and you start working on everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an interesting dichotomy. You become so aware, but I was so intent on shifting my experiences within the medical world that I went to school as though I was going to medical school. And so within 3 years, I had over 5,000 hours of training and internships. And just to give a little perspective, a medical profession doctor averages 3,800 hours all of medical school. Chiropractic, 4,200 hours approximately all of medical school.
Wow.
And so I did that in 3 years. And while doing that, was homeless for a year, had 3 jobs, and ended up creating 3 of the first corporate wellness programs, as you said in the intro, in the country, because my school backed up to the campuses of Intel, Nike, and Tektronix.
There you go.
We needed to have more clients for our clinic. I went and said, hey, well, why don't we bring the clinic to them? And so there you have it.
So when was that? Because even now, corporate wellness is still a little, there are some that are still kind of, it seems a little woo-wooey, or they, it's like, oh, you're going to come in and do mindfulness. Like, there's still some elements of that. You must have been a bit of a maverick at the time.
Yeah. I think that most companies have no idea what they're doing when it comes to taking care of the community that they call employees. And unfortunately for them, they cost themselves a lot of money, because they're not working on making sure that their employees have the utmost perfect health, both in productivity, employee loyalty, employee retention, retraining, unemployment insurance, workers' comp insurance. I mean, anything that you could possibly imagine gets better when a company does this. And yes, it is still a little bit of a desert out there when it comes to, it's like maybe there's a little oasis in the desert of certain companies that are doing it.
Well, it's interesting. You think like after Google and Amazon and, Zappos and some of these, huge companies that incorporate that mindset, that more people would get on board, more companies like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. But I think sadly, it's like marketing. They look at that as an expense rather than an investment, especially when times are tough. Like with the first budgets that get cut, oftentimes are the marketing budgets, the training budgets, and the, ancillary budgets. The next thing you know, there's no coffee in the building.
Right. Well, what they consider to be important is so far removed from what is important.
Right.
If you have, there's a company in my area, and I'm not going to name names, but it's a very large company. Worldwide, they have about 50,000 employees, and I think they're about 17 billion in revenue. And when I talked to them about incorporating a corporate wellness program in their company, they said, well, we kind of do that. We have health fairs and we do flu shots, and this is not corporate wellness. And so then I said, well, have you ever tried to incorporate a really integrated program before? And they said, well, we kind of did, but the company didn't do what we thought they should be doing for our hard costs. So we just told them they had to pay us back.
Whoa.
Like, how long did you give it? Trying to ask more questions. They just weren't very open to
Yeah.
the possibility that you have 50,000 employees. That's more than many cities have populations. And then you take and you extrapolate that, how many members of families are involved in that, right? And you could be having a massive effect. And let's say you spent $1 billion. I'm just going to go like really high, because it would never cost anywhere near $1 billion to run a good corporate wellness program. But let's say it was $1 billion. That's out of a $17 billion a year, revenue, not very much, right? But what you would gain is approximately 80% more productivity, because if you look at what's called presenteeism, it's a thing that most people don't talk about, is the time that somebody is at their desk at work and basically they're present, but they're absent.
Right.
So that averages out of an 8-hour day, 5 hours of that day. Okay. Average productivity is about 3 hours per day. So if you increase that by 2 hours, let's say, so the productivity is now 5 hours versus 3, and you have 50,000 employees, how many hours is that? How much productivity is that? How much money can you be generating in revenue from that? I mean, it extrapolates into an unconscious amount of money, unless you're a math genius.
Well, yeah, that compound interest is insane, because it compounds on the compounding, which is crazy, because if it's all happening at the same time, it is immeasurable. And what's really interesting is now, as we're putting a timestamp on this conversation, is we're still in the middle of this, COVID craziness. And a lot of companies, and I'll speak for, I won't mention them, but it's a friend of mine. He's got about 450 employees, and his experience has been, now, mind you, he is very much into corporate wellness and so forth. So he was able to transition pretty well. But he said that what's really interesting is they're more productive at home than they were at work. But the difference is the times they worked was very interesting. He said, because, I have them come into the office, and yeah, the presenteeism, there was some distractions and all of this. So there was always that otherness that happened. But when they're home, they're working more efficiently, but at weird times. Like, instead of, like sometimes I see that there's some productivity happening after 7 o'clock at night, because during the day they were doing what have you and so forth. And he's got a healthy organization and it's doing well for him. What's interesting, and we're going to see a bell curve, because I think a lot of companies are experiencing, this is where guys like us, like all the healers, the therapists, the people who are understanding how much the personal drives the professional is even more necessary, is that at first, right now, there's been a group of people going, hey, wait a minute, look at my bottom line savings. I don't have an office. I don't have what have you. And it seems like there's still a bit of a novelty of working at home and figuring it out, and fear right now driving some of the energies here. But what's on the rise is day drinking, other distractions that are getting sucked into, and then just stress alone, the amount of cortisol that is being, generated in people's bodies, just being stressed out with all these challenges, is going to catch up. And it already is, but it hasn't come like full circle yet, because there's going to be there's this kind of rise of like, hey, this is kind of interesting and cool, and all right, we'll figure it out. But I believe there's a reckoning that's on its way. And now more than ever, we need to be sensitive to that and be offering our services and opportunities to organizations, because it's even harder to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my next book that I'm in the process of writing is called Tribal Living in a Modern World, The Corporate Culture Revolution. And frankly, the premise is that corporations, especially large corporations, are really not designed for productivity.
Right.
Design, it's like you have an accounting department and an engineering department and a marketing department, and they're all separated, and the people are separated by floors and they're put into cubicles, right? Versus having what I would call a circle environment, tribal circle. So you have multiple people working on a specific project from multiple modalities, and you create small teams that can be extremely productive and nimble. And nimble is really a key, especially in times like this with COVID, pandemics and stuff, is having project-based teams that can move and pivot at will. It's kind of like the difference between a marching army of 10,000 and a Navy SEAL team of 6.
Right.
Right? They just are more productive with what they got.
Well, and obviously there needs to be a little bit of a hybrid, because those teams do end up working together as the 10,000 going. So it's certainly an interesting dynamic.
Work together, but if you think about it like spokes on a wheel,
Yep.
You have one wheel and then a spoke going off to another wheel, and then a spoke going off to another wheel. It kind of makes it so that you can be nimble, be productive, and create more of a community feel, which helps with productivity. So what you don't have right now is you have self-productivity, but you don't have group or team productivity.
Yep. Interesting.
With each other.
Walt Disney's corporate structure was a circle. It wasn't like a typical, top down. It was a circle. And while Walt was in the center, there was much more of a philosophy like you're sharing, where it was more teamwork, because everyone kind of knew what everyone else was doing and the roles they were playing. And then how he built his business was actually interesting in his, we use it in NLP, the Disney strategy, where basically he would get a group of people from all walks that would go in and say, okay, we're going to just focus on ideas, just ideas, and just play. No, you can't critique, nothing, just be as wacky as possible. Then move to another room with the same team and say, okay, now we're the implementers. How would we do these crazy ideas? No downers, no whatever. And then it would go to a third room, separate everything, but the same team, and go, okay, so what are the pitfalls? What do we need to be concerned about? And just cycle through this system. And they were able to create such incredible things and think outside the box, because they didn't have like, okay, we got to send that up to, some other department where they're going to go, well, yes, bounty counter, and then, tell you all the reasons why. It was more collaborative. So yeah, and it's so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the most important things. And Walt Disney, one of the things about Disney's employees is, if you see a piece of trash and you're not the trash guy, you're still picking up the trash.
Right.
You take ownership of your role more because of the environment that's created. And
it's the understanding of, like what the other roles are, and go, oh, I'm helping out the big picture by doing this. Right. And the trust is going to come the other way.
And Mind Valley and, SAS and all of these companies that have incorporated these amazing wellness programs, that kind of ownership in their company has been produced. And so I wish it would be produced more. And by the way, because I like to be controversial, this kind of thing works in government too.
That's where I was going to go with that. I was like, that's the biggest challenge we have, is like, man, you think the system we have, the way it's going right now, we need more of it. Right. It needs to be, totally, like I'm all for reinvention. Like I'm cool with that conversation, not to pick a side, but like when we were hearing that word, like, oh, we're going to reorganize, sadly, much of the reorganization concepts that we're hearing are not ones that are more collaborative. They're actually more dictatorial, top down, like we're just going to tell you how to do stuff instead of actually enrolling. However, everyone listening here, you need to take responsibility, because we voted these people in. We are the ones, and unfortunately, we spend far too much energy on like the president and not nearly enough energy on the local governments. Because right now, our challenges are because of local governments, not because of who's president. And it's mind-boggling that people don't see that.
Yeah, the thing about government is, and Thomas Jefferson, I believe, said this, we need a revolution every 25 years just to make sure that the people aren't getting stagnant. And, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but to make sure that the government isn't getting too high on its horse,
Yep.
so to speak, and stagnating. Well, we're not producing new politicians that have high integrity yet. I believe that the next generation, like your kids and my kids, are going to be a little bit more of that high integrity.
I hope so.
Really wanting to change the world.
I'm hoping so. We need to expose them to more free thinking, because right now I think we're producing a bunch of wusses, because everyone is so afraid, so scared of everything, and an expectation that there should never be any concerns or fears or challenges or strife or anything. That's a delicate balance, because the next generation, while has access, I'm hoping they're not indoctrinated into fear thinking.
Yeah, well, this is true. And, I just see it in my son. My son, I just read a post because he's at his mom's right now. But she posted something about his second day of school, the teacher asking what they were feeling about being on online e-learning. And my son said, "I'm angry." And the teacher asked, "Why are you angry?" And he said, "I have 5 businesses, and I don't think what you're teaching me is going to help me with any of them." So, he's in first grade, right?
Yeah.
6 years old. And what he's saying is true. I think that there's a place in kids that if we can cultivate it,
right,
and nurture it properly and not suppress them, but have them structure their free thinking into a way that's really productive, we can create a next generation that's going to flip the switch on the status quo. What I continually hear in government in general is either go back or progress forward. But when I hear the go back, I think, okay, so what are we going back to? The dark ages?
how far back?
How far back do we want to go? Or how far forward are we thinking? And when I hear the progressive, thoughts, and I'll give Bernie an example, right? All he's doing with healthcare, because that's my field, this is what I pay attention to the most. All he's doing is changing who's paying. If it's going from insurance companies to government, you're not changing a system that is inherently flawed. And the inherent flaw in that system is that we are a procedure-based system. We don't bonus or pay or incentivize results at all. The more procedures you do, the more money you make. And so if I were to do that as a trainer for the Olympics, I would not have a job, because I got results, I got more clients, and I worked on results very specifically. It wasn't how many things do I do, it was what is the quickest way to get the most results in the most optimal time period, and let's create a plan to do that. And I don't see that happening in government or in healthcare or in any other really major factor of American society, infrastructure to anything else.
Yep.
What's happening is really all about how many things can we do, how much money can we produce for our stockholders, not necessarily how good are the results going to be for the people. And we've moved away from this society of mastery.
Well, and sadly, as you know, it's so interesting, the cognitive dissonance that people can sort of live in is, we all know that therapists and doctors and all that benefit from people being sick, and that the very often the program in place is designed to keep people coming back, not to prevent them from coming back. And, you know, like, and I'll give a great example again, you know, using where we are right now. I have not seen really anybody. As a matter of fact, I did see a doc. The only thing I did see, I see all the, you know, the community we hang in, our ecosystem has a lot of healthcare, a lot of holistic, a lot of like, hey, take care of yourself, you know, eat well, sleep, exercise, drink lots of water. You know, if you need some extra supplements, take the ones that are appropriate, you know, like right now, what is going to boost your immune system, all of that. And you don't see anyone in media, in healthcare, you don't see Fauci going, you know, what would be really good for you is to boost your own immune system and do what you need to do to be sure. Like, no, but we can go out and get McDonald's and all this crap food and make sure that that's super available. But
alcohol too, that was always the bars.
Right.
And you know this, I mean, that's like a little bit addictive, a little bit, you know, bad for you maybe. Possibly.
Yeah. And yet I did see a doctor posted basically saying things like vitamin C and, you know, water and zinc and all these things, they do nothing for you. That's a waste of time. You need to, you know, take, you know, like, you know, the prescribed medicines that we provide. And I couldn't but here's the thing, where's the cognitive dissonance is almost everybody knows this. And yet they're still arguing it, and they're going, well, yeah, but Fauci says blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, I get that. And use a little common sense. Like, even if there's an element of truth to that stuff, I'm not going to argue that. I just want to add this other part of the conversation because I'm not going to win the argument. Like, right. You've made that decision, fine. And could you just also consider taking better care of yourself?
Well, you know, I found it hilarious. When I walked into the grocery store at the beginning of the pandemic, it was, you know, like a hurricane was coming in Florida. The shelves empty, right? The bread aisles, the deli meat aisles, the chocolate aisles, aisles, all completely empty. You know what was there? I bought plenty of organic food because nobody was buying the organic food. And while organic food is not necessarily the end all be all of life, it's at least better than food, right? Or sugar foods that kill your immune system. So you know, it's like for the citizenry, yes, you have to take some responsibility to research and to do your due diligence on what you're choosing for your health. But for the system at large that is wildly delivering false information, it's hard to be a citizen and look up on Google and then all of the, you know, the things are like fact check this. Oh, well, there's no proof. Fact check that. Oh, well, there's no proof. Well, it's like, okay, so what is that Valium you're taking made out of? It's made out of valerian root. Oh, an herb. Maybe the herb that has very few side effects, if any, is better to take than the prescription that's been an isolated compound of valerian root that then has, you know, a lot of other cofactors they add in that then creates a lot of side effects that then makes you want to have to take another pill later on to counteract that pill.
And follow the money, because you can't patent nature. So there's no way to make the same amount of money if you just redistribute what God provided. You just got to modify it so you can put your stamp on it and then market it as something that's even better. And it's more concentrated, but you also add all the other, you know, unnatural ingredients to create the indications that you have to then take something to counteract it.
Right. But see, God is a very smart guy, and he added in cofactors to things.
Right.
We don't see as active ingredients in the natural plant that help that plant actually do its job. Right.
Right.
They have a saying, for everything that you can get as an illness, you can get a cure right next to it in nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you got poison ivy somewhere, you also got an aloe plant that you can rub that, rub the itch and get rid of the itch. I mean, there's always in nature something that goes alongside that helps. So things like gluten, right? We know this. This is a protein. It's a poison that stops the bugs from eating it. We have bread, and I don't mean bread, I mean B-R-E-D bread. We have bread, extra gluten into our wheat in the United States. Doesn't happen in many other countries. There are some that also do that, but in places like France and Italy, they don't do that. Their bread is a lot healthier. You can talk to somebody who's been to France and eaten a rich, buttery, bready diet, and then somebody who's been in the US and had the same food. Here they blow up, there they shrink. And you ask yourself, okay, so what's the question? And here's the thing that I guess I'm really focused on is the questions that we ask.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why is it that this is this way? Why is it that we are okay with living in a system that is so suboptimal, and we say, yay, it's our system? We didn't create it. There are people who created it. It's been made up. I mean, society at large is a figment of our imagination.
Mm-hmm.
We designed it. So couldn't we just go back and design something better? Take what we know and say, okay, let's take what we know and rearrange it, reconfigure it so that it's better, more productive, more performance, better results. That's my wish for, that's the legacy that I'd like to be a part of leaving, is shifting the world so that the cognitive dissonance, the critical thinking, the nuanced thought comes back into play. And, I think a lot of it has to do with these podcasts that we do versus reading books. We now listen to books and listen to things.
Oh yeah, I listen with my ears all the time now. Audible is like awesome.
Right. And it is, but there's something magical that happens when you're holding a book.
Agreed.
And you're reading, and you can even read it out loud, and you're following, and your eyeballs are moving. You know this, REM therapy a little bit. Your eyeballs are moving in parts of your brain, activating those centers of your frontal cortex that associates with executive function, which is diminishing in our society completely.
Well, agreed. I mean, there is that challenge, and how do we use the tools? Because it's so funny. Like here we are. Like one of the addictions that I am well aware of is Facebook and technology, and yet this is being broadcast on Facebook and will be on YouTube and will be on the very technology that is partly responsible for the disintegration of that critical thinking and so forth, and adding the fact checkers. I get it. I get the argument. Facebook is a private entity. However, I understand the challenge. Like, are you a publisher or are you a distributor? That changes, a lot of, the energy behind it. That being said, as a private company, if they want to fact check or whatever, and we as consumers go, screw it, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to find another place to have this conversation. And that's where, and I think, ethical capitalism is the best system ever, because it creates the necessity for keeping on your toes, making sure you're adding value, creating something that people are going to come back for because it's adding value, not because they're addicted to it. But I digress. How can we utilize the technology to create the paradigm shifts? And yeah, we may not be having as much bilateral experiences with auditory too much, although all my hypnosis, my guided hypnotics have binaural beats in them.
Right.
So I'm being sure that I'm addressing that the best I can. And I guess we could be using our hands more when we're talking and get people following. And but yeah, that's the challenge, is how do we utilize the resources available and, the ecosystem, infiltrating the ecosystem. It's like that, you got to get wet if you're going to, join someone in the pool.
Well, I would hope so. Unless you're in a bubble.
Yeah. And
so
nothing.
Yeah. And a lot of people are in bubbles.
Yes.
So how do we use it? We create new technologies that stimulate the eye-brain connection, heart-brain connection as well. I mean, heart math is one of those pieces of technology that does it. Something that Dave Asprey has been working with in his 40 years of Zen is brain stimulation. So he hooks you up to brain stimulators. My buddy was biofeedback massive expert. His protocols are used now in Oxford University. And so doing biofeedback, utilizing the technology that we have. There's Halo 2, which is out to help with motor response in the brain. There's EMDR therapy and different things that we can do to stimulate the brain in those different ways. And look, I have a brain tumor, and my frontal cortex is diminished capacity. And yet, so executive function and detail orient, I have struggle with. So I bought an LED light therapy band that pulses at specific hertz in order to start stimulating my brain. And I nose lights that I, shove up my nose, and it's red light therapy that helps with pituitary gland, which happens to be where the tumor is. And so there are ways, when you are aware and when marketing is done well, right, that can start giving options for people to rebuild those pathways. But guess what? Those aren't covered by insurance.
Right.
They're not covered by the system, right? The things that actually work.
Yeah, the ones that are focused on results.
On results, yeah, are not the things that are covered by the system. And so we have a fundamental requirement in life, in my opinion. If you're a doctor out there, chiropractor, therapist, any of these fields, you see every single day the inefficiencies in the system. And my challenge to you is start learning about another modality, start integrating your work with other people in the field who get results, and start fighting the system, because it is your requirement to produce no harm.
Well, and what's so interesting when you bring that up, I think, sadly, the trust in the big government, big pharma, and that's, again, the cognitive dissonance. Everybody knows that they're all in it for the money, yet they still listen when they're saying, well, do this. You're like, well, hold on. If I do that, you're the only one who benefits. And the truth is that all of these big companies, hospitals, they are businesses. They're not a collective of doctors committed to doing no harm. There are doctors who work there who are indoctrinated and needing to survive through the experience of being paid by the hospital. And whether they realize it or not, they have certain patterns that are just part of the process, and they're well-meaning. And it's not that, they believe in it, and that's a separate conversation. It's because they're in that system and surviving and thriving for some through the system.
Yes. And here's my caveat to that, because yes, they've been indoctrinated from the day that they entered medical school. And in that case, it's not their fault. But moving from 10 minutes on average to 6 minutes on average per patient visit, as a doctor, you're not going to get a full story of what's going on in that person.
Right.
You know that you can't provide anything other than a possibility at that point. So let's try this drug and see what happens.
As long as it's not hydroxychloroquine and zinc. And
you have no ability to have the time to produce a plan based upon all the factors of the person. Like, if you look at medical people in the shamanistic world, right? They would come to your house. They would spend a week or two with you, see how you lived, see what was going on in your life. And I get that we can't do that, but we could sure as hell take an hour-long conversation with a patient and say, okay, I want to hear everything. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick response for now, and I'm going to go back and take another hour to develop a plan of action that includes things like checking in to see how it's working in the results wise, and create a plan, 6 months, a year, however long it needs to be. We're going to create a plan to change your life and the quality of your life, the health of your life. You don't see that happening unless you're going to, say, a functional medicine physician or an alternative care doctor. That isn't required by the insurance companies to basically live on a 6-minute visit and 40, 50 patients a day, that you do that.
And they keep increasing the requirements and decreasing the opportunity. And the doctors are they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because now with the entitlement mentality that there's an expectation that, and here's what's really interesting, back when Obamacare and that whole conversation, I noticed a shift in language that I'm not sure a lot of people were aware of. It went from a conversation linguistically from health insurance, which implies that is, in case you need it, you take personal responsibility, you take care of yourself, and that's like an insurance policy that, okay, I've done what I can, but just in case, to health care, which then becomes an expectation, an entitlement, a situation where we're going, well, you're supposed to provide this for me, and I should be able to do whatever I want to my body, and then everybody gets the same level of treatment and gets the same level of consideration. And by the way, we saw that with the way they handled COVID in the first place. A complete blanket response to pathology, rather than going, well, wait a minute, hold on. There are some other mitigating factors. There's a lot of other things to consider, instead of shutting everything down and then going, now what?
Yeah. Nuanced thinking has not been applied to much of any of this situation. And, I'll give you an example of something I posted on somebody's site. I don't care if you wear a mask or don't wear a mask. Let me just put that out there. Do what you want, okay? The mask box does not do anything for COVID. Why? The mask on the majority, surgical masks that majority of people are using, cloth masks, handkerchiefs, even worse, but the masks filter to 10 microns. Okay, the virus is 0.1 microns. So if somebody coughs on you and it gets on your mask, you're gonna breathe it through the mask. Okay.
Well, the argument is the amount of stuff is that's their argument, right? As they say, well, but it's all in droplets.
The argument is that the mask is for sneezing and coughing, and the speed at which it goes and the distance at which it goes in those droplets. Not really even so much the amount, just the distance at the speed, right? Okay, I was taught etiquette. My mom made me read Emily Post growing up. You cover your face when you cough or sneeze. So if I was to cover my face when I cough or sneeze, I am masking. It's not going out 10 feet with however many droplets at 50 whatever, or however many miles per hour it goes, right? That being said, I don't care if you wear a mask or not. Just don't, shame other people for choosing their choice. This is why we have America and freedom. And by the way, that's not the cause of COVID. It doesn't prevent it. It helps the spread very minimally, and that's only if you're covering up, right? But here's the real thing about that. Nuanced thinking. People are wearing the masks in their car when they're alone. People are touching the masks constantly, moving them, touching them, reusing the same mask over and over again. If you've ever been in a surgical room, you'll know that the masks are changed throughout the shift over and over and over again. Hands are sanitized all the way up, right? Gloves that are being worn are taken off
every time
and are taken off very specifically so you're not causing cross-contamination. One glove goes into the other, right? You're not causing contamination. So nuanced thinking. Nobody has been talking about how to use these things. That's my point. Nobody in the media is talking about how to use these things.
Well, if you do, then you get attacked.
Right.
Like, how dare you? You want people to die. Like, well, I don't remember saying that.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I said, if you're going to use these tools, use them correctly. Otherwise, you're using a hammer for a screw, and you're going to screw yourself up, right? You're touching all this food in the grocery store with
well, and what's crazy is, like, my uncle is an ER doc and his wife is a nurse, and we sometimes have the conversation, and she, she's like, well, you'd be happy that the surgeon is wearing a mask while they're operating. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I'm trying to see the entire relevance, because we're not operating on each other. And even if people don't cover their mouths when they sneeze, I don't see people running around coughing and sneezing like as a majority of their experience. So, like, I'm generally not that close to people anyway. And and then I actually had a thing with my HOA. It's so funny, and people would get upset about it, or some people got upset. We're paying for our HOA for our pool, and they won't open the pool because the lawyer is like, well, we don't have the staff to make sure that people are 6 feet apart, that they're wearing their masks, and that the bathroom, that the chairs aren't disinfected and all of that. And I'm like, so wait a minute, are you telling me you think we're too stupid to be able to monitor ourselves, that if I'm feeling like I'm too close to somebody, that I just get up and move? If I'm not comfortable with the chair, that I bring my own chair, like I'm at the beach. If I don't want to use the bathroom, I just walk back to my house and I use my own bathroom. Like, are you telling me that we have to continue paying for the use of the pool, not have use because your lawyer thinks that we can't manage ourselves? And he was like, yeah, kind of. And that's what our world has become, where we're so busy worrying about what other people are doing. And then someone said, well, people are too stupid. That's the attitude of some people. They just think they're too stupid. And I'm like, oh, so basically now you're dictating, you're actually creating a bigger problem for everybody, because you think there are some people, based on your model of the world, are too stupid. And I don't need to tell you what side of the conversation that person would be on when it comes to politics.
Yeah. I don't pay attention much to politics. People have been calling me all kinds of names, like, on both sides. Doesn't matter which side you're on. I'm called the opposite side because I don't have an opinion about sides, right?
Right.
I don't label myself anything.
I do. I'm a common sensitive.
Oh, okay. So you have a now label. I am not, because I might have common sense right now and I might be passionate later. So
when using that term, I reserve the right to make a decision not based on any paradigm other than what I have available.
right. Okay. See, that works. I prefer not to have the labels, but I have been labeled
Right.
because I don't think that masks are bad. I don't think that they're good. I don't think that they're anything in particular. I think a mask is a mask. How you use the mask is what's good or bad.
Well, that, and I think here's where sometimes we get under fire, and this is where I would get under fire, is the idea that I also reserve the right to choose.
That too.
And then now all of a sudden I'm going to be labeled as, conservative because I believe in my right to choose, that I'm making myself, I'm selfish by making myself more important. When I go, well, no, you have the choice too. I'm not suggesting that you don't choose. I'm just saying that this country is built on the art of choice. And if we eliminate choices, we're going to be painting ourselves in a corner.
Right. And Doug, I've known you a long time. You are anything but conservative. And you are anything but liberal.
Yeah,
You're
rock star. Yeah.
You're a rock star.
Love and love too. I mean, that's really what I'm about is love, and doing it from my perspective with excitement and a verve. And again, that's a choice, right? And here's what's interesting. And I think people don't even take this even further. They don't even realize that censorship of speech becomes censorship of thought, because they're so directly connected. To be able to speak your mind and allow for conversation allows for new thinking. If you eliminate the ability for conversation, you now eliminate the opportunity for thinking, because you've now eliminated the input and created a fear for output, which then will atrophy those parts of the thinking.
Right. I was just watching an interview that JP Sears did with London Real, with the guy who created London Real. And he was talking about all this censorship that he's been going through and how he's now had to create his own network that is for free speech. Well, we don't have anymore really a national network. We don't have national news. We don't have, based on the premise of free speech, based on the premise of our Constitution, right? We don't have that anymore. All the news channels have been allowed as of, I think it was in the early 80s in deregulation, to advertise. They used to be required to be non-for-profit.
Now you can't get on the news unless you're paying for it.
Exactly. Why was that not-for-profit? Because they didn't want them to have a fucking agenda. And I'm sorry,
You can say agenda.
A little passionate about this stuff, and that agenda word just gets people every time. But they were not allowed. Pharmaceutical companies were not allowed to advertise on TV. Why? Because why should you be advertising to people a drug that your doctor is supposed to know much more about? Ask your doctor. Oh, and by the way, we have this list of side effects that we're going to speak really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even understand that, including anal leakage and sudden death, right? I mean,
this antidepressant, side effects, or suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. Look, you're in a market, in a world, you've been in the past running some rehab facilities, and you've had some amazing experiences, but how much of the drugs that you had to deal with were prescription?
A lot.
Why? Because they're designed that way.
Well, and also there's a mindset. It started out for a lot of people, the doctor prescribed it, so it must be okay. And then when things got out of control, the doctor didn't know how to not prescribe it anymore. Like this was a situation I had. A friend of mine, she has rheumatoid arthritis, and she has it really bad. She's had it since she's an infant, and she's since lost her eyes. Like she's lost sight. And while she was going through some of the operations, the doctor prescribed oxycodone, and she started taking it. And within a couple of weeks, she was like, something's not right. I want it more than I should. I'm like, what the doctor gave me is not like, I want to stop. Like, I want off of it. Went back to the doctor prescribing it and said, get me off this. I want to stop. And he's like, I don't really know how to do that. Like, they didn't even have a protocol because they're not educated on it. Like, addiction is such a small part of any doctors, psychiatrists, not as much. They have some, but for just a regular doctor who prescribes, dentists, doctors who some painkillers, they have like one class on addiction.
Yeah, it's
and it's an elective.
Oh, we could choose
I don't know that to be true, but I do know that they have very little information provided on addiction.
No, absolutely. You know, I had a very famous client once that came to me through an NA meeting, right? So my chiropractor friend who I worked with got a call from somebody who worked with us who was in the NA meeting that this person had a major injury. It was a Sunday and needed somebody to come work on him. So I get there, and this is a very famous person who's been in some very famous rehab facilities, okay, for addiction. Well, what did his doctor prescribe him?
Oxycodone.
I told him, I cannot work on you while you are on this medication. I had a phone call with his doctor, and I told him, if you do not give him something that is non-narcotic, then we're going to have to move him away from you. Right? Didn't listen. The person was already pretty up on the cycle of addiction at that point. So I had to stop working, because if I'm working on somebody's tissues and pushing them around
and they're not feeling it,
and they're full of toxic, drugs, guess what's going to happen? They can detox from just moving the poison out of their fat tissue into their bloodstream, right?
Right.
We could have some serious issues.
Well, you could be causing more harm because they're not feeling hey, tell me when it hurts, like pressure. You're not able to read their bodies, go, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's too much. That's not enough.
Exactly. There's so many contraindications to doing that. But the fact of the matter is, it's happened over and over and over again that the doctors are prescribing these prescriptions when they have no idea how to cut inflammation. Right. They have no idea. Like, inflammation is the immediate cause of all disease. All disease. So how do you cut inflammation? How do you stop a body from producing more inflammation?
You eat more sugar and more gluten.
And take a lot of drugs.
Yes.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? But don't drink water at all, because water is poison. You get the point, right? The world has kind of gone into this topsy-turvy, what they used to call it with Superman, the
Bizarro world.
Yeah, whatever they called it, the backwards world. That
I thought it was bizarre, but
yeah, that's what we're living in. A very bizarre society that says we got to quarantine healthy people. We can't do anything like go out in the sun and hug each other that boosts your immune system and commune with our friends and, have an enjoyable time. We can't do that. We have to do everything via Zoom.
Well, and the whole idea, like when people were saying about, taking care of the elderly and like the infirmed and then prevent people from seeing them. My mom's husband is in a nursing home and is in one of the ones that like have been all over the news, or the big, like one of the supposedly the most successful, like we're the best ones on Long Island, and they're we're one of the hot spots for like all the craziness. But people are dying literally of loneliness. Like they're not able to seep. They're wondering why people's immune systems are dropping anyway. When you prevent them, they're not allowed outside. They're not allowed to have any food brought in. So you can't give them any healthy food. The food that they have is crap. And then my mom was actually paying extra people. Like every day, my mom's husband would have someone with him personally for a few hours a day, because she understood, like she would go visit, but she had a life. She's like, no, I'm just going to pay someone so that he has attention, because that's a need.
Yeah.
And now they're wiping all of that out. And then, and people are dying like alone, and they're going, oh, you don't care about anybody because you want to go see your family. Oh, you selfish person. I'm like, excuse, what?
So what is selfish about taking somebody outside, out of a nursing home and giving them some sunlight? 10,000 IU of vitamin D in 10 to 15 minutes of sunlight.
Because a droplet could go flying out of their mouth and go flying up in the air and then land on a bird that could come across to the neighbor's house, drop on their cat. The cat comes in the house. The kid pets the cat, then hugs mommy, and oh, no, we got to take the kid out of the house too now. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? I mean,
they haven't taken kids out as far as I know in America yet.
But you and I come from a world of training, and we call certain things stinking thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What? Well, that's kind of stinking thinking. That's not optimal, thought pattern.
So here's my little sort of philosophy on kind of what's happening as well. I use Tony's 6 needs model in this conversation, and what I'm seeing is people double downing to keep their certainty. That even though they know that there could be other ways of thinking, that would put them in a realm of uncertainty. And the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. So I can just double down on my stinking thinking. Then I get my connection by hanging out with other stinker thinkers, right? And I surround myself in my bubble, right? We had that conversation earlier, my bubble of stinking thinking folk. And then I will delete, because I'm not going out and hanging out with my friends. I only have them on my social media. I'm going to delete them and tell them to delete me if they don't agree with me. So now I've got even more certainty and a deeper sense of connection. I get tons of significance because I could say F you to all this because I've got all this passion and energy around it. And I have an illusion of contribution because it's for the good of us all. It's for your safety that I'm doing this. And I'm growing because, well, I learned something new, even though it may be wrong. I double down on it and I own it. And if any other doctor, well, then it must be from Fox News. Then because if it doesn't go along with my alignment, which all the other news agencies and everybody else says, it must be from one other source. So you suck.
Right. Yeah. We've seen these 2 doctors from Bakersfield, and some of their videos have now been deleted, censored. They had over 200, 300 some odd patients. Their clinics were spanned from like Bakersfield to San Diego. So they're frontline, dealing with this every day. And they used a protocol and they had results. Now, I've heard doctors say, well, they're not scientific results. They haven't been double-blind studied, peer-reviewed, papered, right? So I ask doctors who love scientific research and hate anecdotal evidence, what's the difference between anecdotal evidence, clinical evidence, and scientific evidence? Because if you're walking on the street and you had a choice, I would prefer clinical evidence over all others, because scientific study is all about isolation. We isolate molecules, we isolate compounds.
It's not real world.
It's not real world. It's an isolation of a thing that we test something on, a hypothesis, and create. So I love science, right? And I love scientific theory and a scientific study. However, clinical study and anecdotal evidence I like, but it's okay. It doesn't really do much for me, because
it gives a direction.
And it could be placebo. It could be anything. You know, there's too many possibilities with anecdotal evidence alone. But clinical evidence is a patient comes in, they've got HIV. They walk out, they have no HIV. That is clinical evidence, right? We're talking about somebody who came in with something and then left without it, and they're still alive. So let's, take that to COVID, because, I like to move things away so much from COVID, even though that's just like the conversation of life these days. But COVID, they walk in with it, with symptoms, without symptoms, doesn't matter. They walk out, they're healthy, they're not dead. Maybe it lasted a week, maybe it lasted 2 weeks. They're good to go. They have the antibodies. They're awesome, herd immunity. That to me strikes as something that I would listen to more than either scientific or anecdotal. But when I hear doctors say, oh, that's not scientific, like, so what's the difference? What would you consider to be the best kind of evidence for something being efficacious? I mean, pharmaceuticals have scientific evidence and papers and peer review, and they still cause, let me ask you this, because you're probably aware. What is the likelihood that somebody on an antidepressant will commit suicide?
The likelihood is I don't know. I know they very often have the thoughts.
Right. From the symptoms of the depressive medication, the thoughts are amplified.
Yeah, very often.
Right? In side effects. So, but they're scientifically reported and proven and peer reviewed and blind studied. But how much do they work in the clinical setting? Have you seen a huge amount of clinical evidence that they work? There are people, and praise, Allah, Jesus, and any other, higher power, that they're working for you. Because a lot of people are saved by that. But the evidence supports the fact that going outside and getting exercise and raising your heart rate and serotonin levels and dopamine levels and eating maybe a little bar of dark chocolate and
smiling
is going to do better for you clinically than taking medication.
Well, and so here's where back to the systematic and systemic conversation is, and I'll give you a great example. I know someone in my family who their family essentially was their children were prescribed, Ritalin or whatever I don't even remember what it was. It wasn't important because I was like, I don't know. Do they have a deficiency in that? Is that why they need it? But anyway, when they didn't have the ability, their kids didn't have and then the mother started taking it as well. Cause I have similar symptoms, so I must need it. The kids started freaking out when they didn't have access to that medicine, as if something was going to happen, which furthers the mindset of, if there's something going on, I need to go external with a pill, with a potion, with a something to solve my problem. And that personal responsibility is put on somebody else. I need to give the drug. I need to talk to a doctor. I need to talk to whatever. Because when the doctors do tell you, well, you probably should exercise. You probably should, like, give you a great example, and you see that the patterns, someone says, look, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to get cancer. And they're like, yeah. And they're sticking it in their trach. They're still doing it. Right. So that mindset is what we really need to break, is that personal responsibility, and go, look, it's going to require an effort on my part. More than just popping a pill. It's going to require me to do something that's a little uncomfortable, like maybe smiling when I don't want to, or exercising when I don't want to, or forcing myself to drink a gallon of water or whatever it is for the day. But that would then be taking too much personal responsibility. Then I can't blame someone. And that's, I think, the biggest addiction we're going through right now, and it's being exploited, is the addiction to victimhood.
Yes. And you know me, I like to argue. I like to debate and produce a different possibility. The system that we've created, the society that we've created, makes it really difficult for people to feel like they have the time, the energy, and the motivation. Well, it's not even motivation, the time and the energy to take care of themselves. Because if we're putting people to work 8 hours at the least, right? A lot of people are 60 to 80 hours a week of work. And they're required to do that in order to just live, in order to just pay bills, in order to just take care of the basics, right? The money, the learning, the expression of life has so diminished within this society over the last 50, 60 years, right? If you look at countries that have things like month-long vacations, right? And they have shorter work schedules.
Yeah, there's a country that the desks, I forget where it is like Denmark or something, that the desks hang, and that at 5 o'clock, doesn't matter what you're doing, they go up. You can no longer work. Like, it's actually prevents you from doing work.
Exactly. And guess what happens when people have more time on their hands? They learn, they experience fun again. They get to know their neighbors again. Part of this whole dissonance with the world and with, we don't know our neighbors anymore. There's not block parties happening on a regular basis. The communities are unsafe. I used to be able to play on the street at 5, 6 years old, hang out with friends, run around, come back in at sunset. I wouldn't do that with my kid out my door, at 6 right now, have him playing and running around in a neighborhood. It's not as safe. We haven't, the neighbors don't know each other. I mean, I know my neighbors, but I made a conscious effort to get to know them. Most people don't know their neighbors. We have really depleted community feel, community accountability, which goes back to your point. Local governments are right now part of the problem, not the president, not anybody else. Local, it goes to even smaller. Local blocks, local streets, local people don't take the time, because they don't have it in some cases, but they don't take the time anymore. It's not an encouraged thing to sit down on your stoop and, meet the world head on, and you go in your backyard, not your front yard. You don't hang out on the porch and watch the neighborhood. We've moved our society so far away from being a community of people. And I think that some people are trying to get that back, but they're getting it back in these protests and in these rebellious ways rather than productive ways. Mm-hmm. And, my buddy AJ wrote a book called Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. And The L, I only remember the L and the V for some reason. I don't know why, but the L stands for learn about your neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and the V is volunteer to be part of the solution, right? Volunteerism seems to only be when there is a massive emergency.
Right.
Loving neighbors and learning about people seem to be only happening when there's massive emergencies. Look back to 9/11. We came together. How long did that last? A year, 2 years, right? And then we went back to the status quo. We just had these massive protests and violence and stuff over cop shooting, right? Or cop killing. Where did that go? Where are the people who are activating themselves and organizing and planning in a really productive way to make a difference and change the world?
That is going to be the interesting thing, because it seems that unless it's, you know, all this virtue signaling, you know, unless you're doing it and you're like super against something, or what you're for is like for what someone is against, like it's very difficult for someone to have like an actual pragmatic conversation and be like, okay, like, can we just like, you know, like people made fun of when, like, was it, back when Can't We All Get Along? The Rodney King. Yeah. And like, that's like a fair statement. Like, hold on, like, where's the productivity of this? And to even question someone and go, well, hold on, are we thinking this through? Is like you're against like that's not okay. And is finding that balance of being productive, and really it is I don't know what the answer is. I think it's far too complex to just, you know, like have a simple answer of like, oh yeah, you just do whatever, you know, other than, you know, live with love, honor, and respect.
Well, that's pretty simple and it works.
It does. In the average situation, you need a lot more love, a lot more honor, a lot more respect, and a lot more openness to, you know, to be a Gandhi when you've got, you know, I wouldn't go into one of a protest right now and, you know, while they're burning down buildings and be like, can't we just, you know, come from love, honor, and respect? They're like, well, they're too, it's like addiction. It looks like addiction to me. When that is reeling out of control and people are kind of losing it, it's like they're addicted. They're not, their brain is not connected. Nucleus accumbens completely bypassed, and it's tribal. It's fight or flight. It's fight. And they don't even know what they're fighting.
They're addicted to the experience that has been repeated like a drug over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. So here's my response. And this is, you know, I was lucky. I had a roommate when I lived in Los Angeles who was a Palestinian Muslim woman. I am a Jew. Her cousin was the attorney for Hamas and the PLO and the Palestinian government. And he worked on all of the peace talks with Israel. And so she was like my sister. I mean, you know, Palestinian Muslim woman, everybody, what are you doing? How can you handle it? It was awesome. You know, she was friends with Barry Gordy and, you know, musician and amazing woman, amazingly smart woman. And we would talk and have these arguments and debates and try to figure out the Jewish-Palestinian conflict in our own little world. And then she would call up her cousin and say, hey, you know, we just had this conversation. Why don't you try talking to Israel about this? And why don't you try talking to the PLO and Hamas about that? And, you know, why don't we figure this out in this way? And let's create some peace talks. Well, the number one thing that you have to do when you're talking about peace is cease the activity that creates the trauma.
Right.
right? If you're talking about being off of a drug, you have to cease taking that drug.
Yep.
That's how it works, right? You stop taking it, you deal with the shit and the deets and the pain and all of the things, the withdrawal of the experience, because you've got to account for the withdrawal experience.
Right.
And the distrust that it's going to continue. And you've got to do it just like you would do addiction, one day at a time, one moment at a time, 1 second at a time. Oh, there was a little bit of a relapse, but I'm not going to make that be my identity.
And here's the challenge with all of that is when we talk about drugs, one can argue, okay, like, drugs are bad, okay? But what we're talking about in many situations is like someone with a food addiction. Like, you still got to eat, right? You can abstain from drugs or alcohol. But what we're dealing with now, I think, and this is why it's so complicated, is people still need to communicate. People still, are need to sometimes get online. And they might have to, and their addiction might be going down the rabbit hole of some conversation on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on what have you. And an argument that some of the things that are being protested, where's the real reality? And is it, and I'm not suggesting it's not real. I'm asking, where is the real reality? Because that's like, the whole thing with COVID. Is it as bad as it is being perceived? And by whom? And if you say, I'm looking at the numbers, I'm not sure, I fail to see, I get it when we shut everything down, the fear was like 11 million people are going to die. We're not even close to that. So then if the real numbers are what we have now, is this the way we would have behaved? If you came out and said 100,000 people, 150,000 people are going to die, would we all go, yeah, that sucks. I'm not sure we can stop that by the shutting down the economy is going to be worth that. And it's so interesting how those lines just continually move.
And how readily we found $3 trillion that we can't put into education. We can't put into healthcare. We can't put into addiction. We can't put into infrastructure, but we all of a sudden found $3 trillion that we could pump into this whole madness. And, that's just an odd thing in general. But here's my thing. I had a friend in Colorado who posted something. He had a buddy, a bunch of people went to go down to the clinic to get tested for COVID. Going to get tested. We're going to get tested. Yay, we're going to get tested. After 3 hours of waiting in line and being told that they still had another couple hour wait, they left. Never got tested.
But they gave them their information, so.
It's not just that. They got letters.
Right.
A week later.
Saying they had it.
They had COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Never got tested, but we're absolutely certain that you have it.
Yeah.
So what is with systemic lying, fabrication of truth, not even, as Donald and some of the people that we know in the motivational industry, they tend to exaggerate certain things.
Marketing.
This is not exaggeration.
Flat out lies.
Flat out lying, fraud on the American public, fraud on the world public. It's lying. So why are we tolerating this as part of our society? And it goes back to government, it goes back to healthcare, it goes back to life in general. We are tolerating bad behavior in all forms.
And the generalizations that are occurring on both sides, because we see plenty of examples. Like every day we see examples of not only testing being erroneous, that people were tested like multiple times and those weren't sorted, like it's the same person, they just add it to the numbers. So you have two examples of numbers being escalated through inaccurate data. lying and multiple counting. Then you have multiple situations where people who were shot and killed, but labeled as COVID death because they had it. So now our death rate is not accurate. There's enough of that for us to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. But if anyone does that, if you're on the pro-mask, pro-lockdown, pro-fear, pro all of that, and someone goes, excuse me, can we just take a look at this? Like, maybe there's something to look at. I'm not saying, I'm giving some,
definitive.
Yeah. Yeah, the other way around, if you go, hey, are we sure these other numbers are right? Like, burn the place down. I'm like, I'm just asking. Is there more to the story here that we could look at? I'm not saying anything. I'm not taking a side other than questioning, because the outcome of the current path is going to be worse than what we're dealing with right now. And it's going to actually create more of this if we're not smart about it, because now, how many people are now dying in these riots? Last night, a few people were shot. Like, where's the line?
How many people are dying of suicide? How many people are dying of loneliness? How many people are dying because nobody is at their house because they can't leave their house, and then they die on the floor, and then they're there for days and days before anybody notices?
How many businesses are going under, and then... Yeah. I know more people who have died from suicide or overdose than of COVID. I don't know anyone personally who died of COVID. I know people who know a person or two, but I don't personally know anyone.
Yeah, I know people who have had COVID.
I know a few people have had, yeah.
I don't know anybody who's died of COVID at this point. I will say, a friend of mine's kid got in a car accident. But if you look died in a car accident, but if you look on his death certificate, he died of COVID. So,
And what's so crazy is that questioning that and just pointing that out is very oftentimes met with like resistance and like you're being an asshole. I'm like, well, no, I'm just being pragmatic. Like I'm
stating a fact. Death certificate says COVID, died in a car accident, 16-year-old kid. Maybe they're lying. Now the question becomes, why is it lying, and why are we tolerating it? And
follow the money, because the hospitals get more money if you died of COVID.
But why is the citizenry, all of the citizenry, and whether you're on one side or the other side, 99.999% of the people are not speaking up?
Fear. Two things. Fear, my feeling, and I could be wrong, is one, fear of the studies have shown that, and again, not to bring politics in this, but Republicans and conservatives, like something like 78 or 80 something % of them are fearful to state their opinion, whereas liberals, Democrats, and so forth are like, 10%, 14%, like some low number, because I think the whole energy, the mindset, the basic philosophies behind someone who's conservative by nature is going to be conservative in their approach as well. So they're not necessarily going to be fighting and arguing and so forth. And then my other sort of experience in life in humans is we generally, like, our problems right now are a byproduct of wanting the easy way out anyway. Like, because we've created technology to make our lives easy, we're looking for the path of least resistance as a guideline anyway. So then when we get conditioned with seeing people making it look easy, by the way, here's the other thing we deal with in the personal development world is modeling successful people. And you go, they're like, yeah, but they worked their ass off. It only looks easy for them because they worked really hard. No one wants to, to give a great example, Tony Robbins, his show Breakthrough aired twice because it showed someone having to work hard it's uncomfortable for people to go, oh man, I don't want to deal with that. But then someone goes, hey, we're going to give you free health care. We're going to give you we're going to get some money so you will do your unemployment to increase. And by the way, I did this when I was 17. I admit it. I worked off the books and collected unemployment when I lost my job. I did it for the time being. And then once the unemployment ran out, then I went back on the books with the company. They were, look, I committed fraud at 17. I admit it. Hopefully the statute of limitations is over, and I think I've paid my taxes back for that 1 6-month period. But that's in our nature.
Right. But, here's the thing. And Buckminster Fuller says this in a very long paragraph, and I'm just going to shorten it. But there's an auspicious notion that people need to work to be valuable. Okay. And that notion has to end, because there's 10,000 people in the world that can create enough technology to have the rest of the people not ever have to work.
Right.
So if that's the case, and we cut out the idea of laziness, and we apply the principle of passion. What are you passionate about? You will do if you have nothing else that you need to think about, right? So somebody like Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Edison, Leonardo da Vinci, they didn't have to make a living in order to live.
Right.
So they were able to create these amazing things that are treasured and priceless in the world, right? And so if we are going to go and move into a society that honors and respects people's passions, we don't need money. And I'm gonna go way out on the other side of something of this, for a progressive, right, for a little bit. We don't need money. We made that shit up too. We don't need to trade. We don't need to work for our value. What we need to do in life is figure out and nurture each other's passions, because somebody's going to have a passion for building something. Somebody's going to have a passion for engineering. Somebody's going to have a passion for math. We are all different people. We can create society without the red tape of having to do something in order to be valuable enough to eat, to live, to, be sheltered. And somebody's going to be passionate about something, fashion, whatever, to clothe people, to, and eventually we'll have transporters and things. We can just, create our food in a molecular box. So,
yeah, I don't disagree. There's a few obvious challenges in the way to get there. One is time. B is there is a difference between, as you know, serotonin and dopamine.
Right.
And dopamine could be achieved by exclusively finding your passion if you don't also put some effort into it. If there isn't some challenge, if there isn't a sense of accomplishment. So the idea that, we get the serotonin by digging deeper, working on something, and then accomplishing something and feeling like we've got, oh, okay, cool. This was a growth, right? This is where Tony talks about fulfillment, that growth and contribution, that value add. There can be a tendency, if we're not careful, to use passions as a way to just get dopamine, like sex, for instance.
Yeah, I get that.
So where, beyond becoming hedonistic, there needs to be a balance, and this is a consciousness conversation, by an elevation of consciousness and an acceptance of not just getting instant gratification, not getting the hit of dopamine, and going, look, I'm willing to put some effort in and be delayed some reaction. I think that's where the challenge, this is the existential challenge we're dealing with, is that we have not been prepared for instant gratification, to understand the difference, because there is something valuable and important in that lag time, in that patience, in that understanding, because nature understands lag time and growth, and that things don't happen. An acorn doesn't become an oak tree overnight. And we've been so conditioned, because technology has created the ability and the opportunity to have instant results, instant gratification. We go, well, why does that happen everywhere? Right. And news education, all of that has been transformed quicker than we have been able to catch up consciously, like our consciousness.
So here's my thoughts on that. So a drug is instant gratification. A supplement and living a lifestyle is not, is a serotonin booster. You're a musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
What instrument do you play?
Guitar, sing, drums.
So where you get your dopamine is from the show and the audience. Where you get your serotonin is from learning and practicing and mastering a piece. Okay. So you can have both.
Agreed.
Right.
That's the consciousness shift that we need to.
The consciousness shift. What people don't realize is that the work, like I told you at the beginning, you asked me how I became who I am. I said the trauma forged me. Right? A sword, a perfect sword, is forged and folded and hammered and heated and cooled and stressed and chipped at, and right?
Mm-hmm.
But you do that happily when it's your passion. When it's not your passion, it's a reluctant, slow movement. So if we could take people out of the mundane, out of the jobs that suck their souls because it's not their passion, they're only doing it for the money, right? And we help them become people who can take their passion, whatever it is, or their genius, whatever that is, and turn it into a mastery, apprentice, intern, master relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of relationships yield the kind of results that you're talking about.
Right. And I'm 100% on board. I agree. You know, it's understanding sacrifice. It's understanding those challenges. And I'll give you a perfect example of, you know, the sad truth of how we're not there. You and I were having this amazing conversation. I've been doing this for a couple of months and have had incredible people on there sharing brilliance, sharing the most incredible things ever. And there are some people who listen and tune in, and there are some people who, you know, will be on board and share it and so forth. But if you and I were to post, screw that guy, screw this guy, you know, some like controversial not for the sake of being controversial, but knowing that, okay, if I say something about Trump or something about Biden or something about, you know, Harris or something about BLM or something about riots or something about whatever, a slew of people are going to come in and give their opinions and, you know, like, and be very passionate about that. Yet you and I have probably had some amazing nuggets from each of us that someone goes, oh, wow, you know, that could transform my life, but it would require an effort. It would require for me to change and consciously transform. Too much work. I'm not going to tune in. I'm not going to stick around. And that's where our mission is. And that's our marketing mission is how do we create the opportunities for people to be willing to take in that information. And we see evidence of the challenge even when Tony released that breakthrough show. It only aired twice, right? And all those episodes were amazing. So but people would rather watch Real Housewives.
This is a long-term solution.
Oh yeah.
But here it goes. Prepare to be offended, some people. Okay? Stop having C-sections. I'll tell you why. Some people say that the path out that tube out through that small space is the beginning of the first struggle for breath and life, and teaches you how to have grit. This is controversial, I know, but in the healthcare system, it's almost illegal to have a child outside of the medical system. And most people are told, just, plan it for a certain day so your astrology matches, and plan it for a
I didn't even think of that.
right?
Wow.
And, we could just plan it, induce it, make it happen, not wait for. The only time somebody should be having a C-section is when it's medically necessary. And 90% of the C-sections that happen are not medically necessary.
Wow.
When we had my son, my wife at the time had a fibroid tumor the size of a basketball blocking the exit.
Oh.
Right. So she needed to have a cut all the way up here. He grew all the way up on this side of her body.
Wow.
And we watched videos of what they called a natural C-section, which mimicked more the exit strategy of smaller incision, squeeze, longer time out, right? It was the first one that this hospital had ever done, and they were really happy that they did it. It was pretty cool because we had to educate them a lot on this process that we had seen. But there are ways to do that. So the point is that the first struggle should be your birth, your chance at life. You're struggling, just like if a butterfly or a caterpillar is in the cocoon trying to be a butterfly, and if you cut that sucker open too early, the wings don't get the strength of breaking free of that cocoon. Now they can't fly and they'll die.
Right. And it's also part of that process is to get all that metaphoric, goo off of it as well. It's all part of the process.
Right. It is what nature has intended. And that's why I say, my new book, Tribal Living in a Modern World, is we have to go back towards nature. We have to accept that nature is what it is. If you're religious in any way, just say God was right. If you're not religious in any way, just say nature knows its system better than we do, and stop trying to fuck with it. Stop trying to cover it up and make it different, because nature is what it is. It has good, it has bad, it has destruction and rebirth. It has flooding in order to make fields mineral rich.
Well, and that why, by the way, so I mean, and I know California's having some forest fires. Forest fires are a part of nature. They're necessary. And the challenge is that when we mess with trying to imagine everything there'll be never any pain, never any challenge, never any whatever, we actually create more pain because it does come home to roost. And then it just gets that much worse because it wasn't taken care of. It's like we're nickel and diming ourselves into spiritual destitution by not appreciating like some of the little challenges, the traumas, the experiences in life. And by the way, our traumas have gotten worse because A, we think there shouldn't be any, and B, then we go, everything's a trauma. Right now, we've gotten so politically correct that people are getting traumatized by a conversation. Like you even just say a word and like, oh, that was traumatic. I'm like, okay, that's on you. I can understand if I hit you, if I abused you, if I actually held you down and did something to you, that I can see as you going, well, that was pretty traumatic. But for me to use a word and you go, oh, I'm traumatized. Like, well, wait a minute. Like, how did you create that in yourself?
Right. And there is a difference between bully and using a word.
Agreed.
For the fires, I say the same thing I say to everything. What have you done between this year and last year when the fires were happening in order to mitigate the response of this year's fire season? Did you plant ice plants? Did you plant succulents that, hold a lot of water? Did you, what did you do in the meantime? Oh, well, you saved money. Okay, that's what we did. We saved money. Well, how much is that money that we saved costing us now?
Right.
This is just, in life. What is the money that you're saving at this moment costing you in the future?
Yep.
Can we get an amen?
Yeah.
You know?
You're either an investor or a consumer.
So what we are failing to do in general in life is think ahead, plan ahead, prepare ourselves for, critically think, find all of the things that could possibly go wrong and account for them, and then realize that there are things we can't account for that are still going to go wrong. And how do we mitigate the responses for that? I mean, this is, you're an NLP master, right? And this is a language that most people have no idea what it is that they are thinking in their own minds and why and how it was programmed there to begin with.
And worse, they think that everybody thinks like they do. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
Echo chambered.
Yep. Surround myself with people who agree with me, and I'm good. And we see that all the time. And even as people, that comes up, like sometimes, Heidi, who's more brilliant than I am, will sometimes say, hey, what about whatever? And then there's a part of us that go, ooh, like we don't want, oh man, like, oh yeah, like we don't want to go, you're right, but we have to go, oh, didn't think of that. Oops. Right. And sometimes we get offended. We're like, oh, you don't, like, we take it personally. And I think that's the challenge in life is one is that I think people are not living a life of assuming the best of other people. Right. We're not looking at the filter, again, just going to NLP presupposition that all behavior has positive intent. Right. And we're not then looking at that. And when someone's even talking about the riots, when someone's freaking out, like, okay, well, what's the positive intent? Let's have that conversation. Because if we can at least assume the best of someone, run a filter, like, okay, they're doing the best with what they can, with what they've got available, and there's positive intent behind it. Maybe we could find a way, and this is a big conversation I have, is about purpose over process. That, I use the gun laws as an example. Like, a full disclosure, I'm not in the NRA, but I am a gun owner. Like, I grew up around them.
Yep.
I don't believe the NRA is sitting there going, ooh, it would be great making sure that people can kill people. Let's see how many people can die. Right? They're not thinking that. And I don't believe, I would like to believe that the people who are anti-gun aren't thinking, it would be great making sure that nobody can defend themselves and everybody will die. Like, everybody wants the same thing. Like, we want to be safe. We want to have the ability to live, love, laugh, to grow, to have our families, all of that. So if we could agree on that, well, then let's back up and go, okay, now I understand your belief behind gun ownership. And now I understand your belief around not having it. And if we have a conversation over agreement on purpose, and now let's mitigate processes, we might be more successful in having a conversation. Sadly, we're going after process and just telling people they're wrong. And like, well, no, you may have a different perspective, and you may have a different methodology, and you may have a different belief system, and that's all okay in the world of freedom. You should have the opportunity to have that. Now let's talk about what our ultimate goal is the safety and sanctity of our environment. And the same conversation should be carried out, because the argument made by someone who's anti-gun is, if there's too many guns, too many people are going to die. And then, okay, well, if there's no guns and people are getting shot, then too many people are going to die too, because the only people who have the guns are the people who have them illegally anyway.
Right. I'm a gun lover, and I'm a hippie. So
yeah, me too.
Go figure that one out. Try to label me now, buddies. Yeah. I love going to a range and shooting. I've had friends I had a friend actually who I met through a at-risk, you maybe have heard of it, Beit Shuvah. It's a temple in California that is a sober living temple.
Okay, right on.
And he was a Vietnam vet who spent 5 years as a POW and has killed many, many, many people. And he and I were talking about this gun thing, right? And as we were at a gun range shooting, and he said, I've just now that I'm sober, learned to like guns again, because I realize that a gun in my hand does not mean a dead person next to me.
Mm.
And that statement is kind of like saying, I realize that a bar of dark chocolate is not a fat person in the mirror. It's the same thing as saying, you know, that what we do is more important than what something is, right? So a gun is a gun is a gun. It has a purpose, and that's to expel a bullet, a projectile at a speed. That's its purpose. That's it. That's what it's built to do, is project something far and fast. What we use things for is a responsibility that we have to take, and how we train our kids and how we grow our future. That's our responsibility, right? Guns allowed us to defend ourselves, to become a nation. Guns allowed the Indians, to get slaughtered. Which one was better? They both are the same side of different coins. We don't want to slaughter and we don't want to kill, but we definitely want to have the protection for our family, right? So how do we take that and say, how do we extrapolate that into the world as a metaphor of itself, right? There's nothing inherently negative about a piece of metal or plastic or whatever that shoots a projectile forward. We've been doing it since the blow darts, tribal society. We've been
years throwing them.
Yeah, we tried to figure out how can we get something further, farther, faster. Bow and arrow,
Yep.
Further, farther, faster. That's kind of a human nature thing.
Well, and what's interesting too is because you use that the analogy of from bow and arrow to to spitball to blow dart to next thing is a technology. Eliminating the technology would also eliminate the growth.
That too. What could it turn into?
Yeah. Like what if, and I know that argument does not come into play for someone who's like, well, I'm just saying, no AK-47s and no AR-15s and no magazines that hold more than 10 or whatever. But again, I think you're back to the same conversation as, Luke 27:14, to whom much is given, much is expected, much is required. So let's grow up a little bit, be responsible, educate ourselves, and value and appreciate what that technology and growth has provided, and then use it for good
and for transformation. And
yeah.
And I'll just put this on another level. Vaccines. How can I appreciate them and how can I transform them? They're no longer necessary, if they ever were, but the concept was good. So how can I make that concept better?
Well, and it goes back to the same conversation around all of this stuff. Like I'm a pro-choice. Like I'll ask that question. Like, what does pro-choice mean?
It means I have a choice.
Right, but some people go, well, I means that I get to kill my my unborn child, or now, depending on what state, I could wait till it's even on the table and let it die because I'm pro-choice. Like, well, okay, so then how is that any different from me deciding whether or not I choose to put a poison in my body that I believe is a poison, that I believe is not necessary? If that's my choice, how can you mandate that and then get mad if someone wants to have a conversation around mandating abortion? Like, right. Where do you draw the line? And I'm not picking a side. I'm just saying, you're running this conversation. It's got to apply for everybody or nobody.
Here's the answer. Stop mandating shit.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay? Stop it. Government, stop it. Okay? Mandating anything in a world in which we are sovereign human beings ain't okay. If I choose to take some cocaine and mix it with a little bit of whatever, I don't even know. I've never had cocaine, but if I choose, hey, I want to try that out. Let me mix that sucker with something else, and I want to kill myself with it. That's my choice. The key is stopping the mandates. Pro-choice should never be on a board. Pro-abortion should never be on the table, right? None of that should be on anybody's table except for technology. Is it possible to do? And choice, the person want it that is having it. That's it. Guns, you want a gun? Go get a gun. Now, I don't see anything wrong with saying you've got to have a license and you've got to have training. I like training. In fact, I'm looking at getting a gun soon. Haven't had one in a while. And I would go back to school and train in how to use it. Mm-hmm. Even though I've had them all my life, I would still go back to school and train. Why? I haven't had one in a while. I need a refresher course. Be smart and critically think about things, but drugs should not be a mandated thing. We've actually, there have been studies done in countries that have legalized it, and all of a sudden drug use goes way down.
It's such a complex thing because I'm not in for mandating. There does have to be, though, a system, an opportunity in place to educate on what can happen if you allow this to go out of control. What can happen? I'm not for prohibition, but I'm for being smart.
Oh, yeah.
Like, look, you want to have a drink? That's great. But if you start noticing things start working out for you, you got to know how to do something about it.
Right. And facilities are wonderful. Having a place to go, look, I've talked about this before. I used to get called in from a center that's very famous for having a lot of famous people in it. And they would call me in if somebody had been there 4 or 5 or 6 times and still weren't kicking the habit. And an agent might call me and say, we really need this to be done because if it doesn't get done, they're going to be dead. And so I'd go and I'd sneak in through the back doors because I wasn't allowed to be there doing what I was doing. And I would do work with a psychedelic to clear the stuff out of that person that was causing them to need that thing to begin with. And sometimes it would be 10-hour session of me doing physical body work on a person that, pushing that fluid out, screaming, crying, emotional release, every possible thing. And we would do that sometimes days in a row until they were done, did not have any need for that drug again. So I've been there and I've seen people at those bottom of the well.
Yep. Well, and
it's not a fun place to be. And I would suggest to anybody who's thinking about going there that you probably don't want to even try it. You don't need to go that low. Learn from other people.
Well, there's a couple of things. Like I remember one time I was talking with we had the detox, and I'm seeing like everyone's just so comfortable. I'm like, I know this sounds like kind of a not really cool, and I don't want to sound inhumane, but I wonder if detox was a little more painful, they wouldn't want to come back. Like we make it almost so pleasurable and so easy that there isn't that extra sort of bit of like getting like, oh crap, like this is like viscerally in our body, because you can't die from opioid withdrawal. The only thing you can die from is alcohol and benzodiazepines, or like those dirty drugs. But cocaine, heroin, it's uncomfortable to be sure, but it's not death. It's not like, and which is unfortunate in some sense, because that's why a lot of drug companies are like, oh, let's take Suboxone at home. You don't have to go to treatment. You could just detox on Suboxone because it's not deadly. You don't need to be in an environment like that. So I think that idea of, again, back to no C-section, if you want to transform, know that if you're in a place that you need to rebirth yourself, it's going to have some challenges, and it's okay. It's not that expectation that would, like, look, as we know this, pain is, I mean, pain exists. There's no way to avoid pain. Suffering is a choice. What we're doing oftentimes is we are spending a lot of time killing ourselves with butter knives because we're not willing to do, like, take the you know, that difficulty of running that risk of failing, running that risk of looking bad, running that risk of being offended or offensive, instead of just like going, well, I understand that that's part of the journey.
Yeah. You know, I spent the last almost year and a half, 2 years, doing a lot of ugly, right? Massive trauma to my personal life. I was in the process of saying screw you to the doctors, and I lost about 142 pounds, which I was told by the doctors because of the brain tumor, I would never be able to lose weight at all. So I'm in the middle of detoxing fat and toxins and, you know, shit out of my system. And then massive trauma left me, and from a car accident, pain, physical pain, emotional pain, toxic pain. And I spent, I don't know how many hours in front of a mirror screaming and crying and wailing and ugly and not having fun at all and lying in a ball of my own tears and sweat, freaking crying, just crying out by myself, by the way. One of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do or chosen to do. And at the end of the day, I was screaming in the fucking mirror, either kill yourself now or shut the hell up. I don't want to hear it anymore.
No.
That was the place I was at. I was, you know, I've got 28 friends commit suicide.
Wow.
In my life. And so I've witnessed what that does to other people's family, to their families. If not for witnessing that, I may have gone through with it, but I knew what it would do to my family. Didn't care what it would do to me because I'd be dead. I wouldn't care at that point. But I also knew what it would do to my purpose. It would cut it right there. And it would make all those 44 years of trauma, wipe them out as if they meant nothing. Because I obviously wouldn't have learned from that lesson.
And it would have actually done the opposite of your ultimate goals, because it would have justified for others, and you would have done more harm to others besides your family, but to everyone else who knew you, go, oh, see, yeah, that's the outcome of trauma, is just end it all.
Exactly. And it was funny because while that was going on, I had two friends whose family members, one of them jumped off a bridge, Daytona Beach, off the freeway into oncoming, traffic, middle of the day. Fucking sad over a girl. And so I'm in this position of crying, wailing. Right now, I'm building a podcast. I'm creating a movement. I've written a book. I've written courses. I'm teaching. And I don't always necessarily feel great, but I definitely feel like I shed a massive amount of skin and trauma from my life. But it's the same as a lobster taking off his shell and going and getting a new shell, right?
Yep.
The pressure, the squeeze is what makes the growth so freaking valuable.
Yep.
So my challenge to people is to find a place, and it's a challenge to myself every single second of every day, is to find a place where the trauma and the pain is worth it.
Yep.
To find the place, and to love the trauma, not to get rid of it, to love it, to experience it as if you know that what's going to come on the other side of that is light instead of dark.
And that the work you do with it creates more light, not traumatizes other people. Because there's a lot of people who hijack their trauma and use that as a justification to cause more trauma. They don't realize they're doing it oftentimes. They justify it, they rationalize it and so forth. But it's that next level of consciousness where it's now critical thinking. Going, okay, wait a minute. The work that I'm going to do with this, it's like, yes, I want to. It's like the difference between like a vigilante and a freedom fighter. Like the vigilante is going to go out and like, remember Death Wish, like look for the problem, look for people, and then not care and wreck everything around it. Whereas a freedom fighter is going, whoa, hold on, let's have this conversation. Is this the right thing we want to do? I'm willing to do whatever it takes, but that is a last resort. Causing more trauma to get my outcome is a last resort.
Yeah. And I've definitely, I know, experienced both sides of being that. Being
we all have.
Person that, it's funny, you have a kindergartner, I have a 6-year-old who's in first grade now, and I am certain that I have caused some trauma unwittingly and unwillingly and unwantingly and unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my absolute best in life to not put my traumas, my beliefs, my things on my son. I don't always get it right. I love him so much. He's such
it's hard when we're such a symbiotic experience where there is crossover and there is going to be things that, again, based on someone else's model of the world, are going to be traumatized because it conflicts with their model. And again, that's where it's not, it's in spite of and despite of what we do.
Right. And, the key is our intention.
Mm-hmm.
Our intentions are really a big key. What do we intend? And then taking responsibility when life doesn't go as intended.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah. If life doesn't go as intended, how did I contribute to that?
What was my role?
What was my role in this mess?
Yep.
I've had to do that a lot in life, a lot in the last year and a half, and really look deeply at who I am and say, you know what? Despite everything, I'm an amazing human being. Despite everything, I am a giver and a lover and a person who wants nothing but the best. And I assume that everybody feels the same way.
Yep.
And if the assumption, like you were saying, is that everybody feels the same way, then having a discussion is no longer an argument or a fight. It's a debate, and it's a conversation that moves us closer to truth and further from belief.
And what an amazing opportunity if the outcome of a debate or a conversation was simply to understand the other person's side, not to convince them, not to influence them, not to have them change their behavior, but simply go, oh, all right, I get that. I see where you're coming from, and be okay with that. That right now we've gotten to such a point where it's almost like a debate. You have to win or lose, as opposed to go, oh, all right, well, that's interesting. Hadn't thought of it that way. I get it. I see how you see that. And based on all of that, that makes sense to me. I don't necessarily agree with it. And my model of the world still doesn't fit in there, but I get how that's your model and why you feel, why you do, how behave that way. Obviously within, confines. I know no one likes to say, all behavior has positive intent. And someone will go, what about Hitler? Like, well, the positive intent was his positive intent. It was what he believed. what he did was insane. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying he had, from his model of the world, that was his belief that would create his ideal world. Right. I disagree with it completely, and it should have never happened.
Yeah, and had somebody, maybe debated him on his premise,
maybe something would be different.
For an outcome, if somebody had been able to say, okay, any other world leader maybe, like took him and said, hey, what you're doing here, you think it's going to get you the results that you want?
What results specifically are you looking for, and why?
Yeah, why is this so important to you?
Yeah.
What is the impetus? And then if the soldiers said, I know I'm told to do something, but I'm not really sure that that's the right thing to do. Why would I do that just because I'm told?
There might be a better outcome, a better way to get to an outcome here.
Right. So, it's incumbent upon our leaders to be leaders. Yes. We choose our leaders, and it becomes incumbent. Hitler did not do any killing. He never shot a single person.
Yep.
Right? He stood in a place and he spoke. He had an idea. His idea sucked ass, but he had an idea. And everybody else that implemented that idea had a personal choice to do so or not. I call it silence being the bully's best friend. Mm-hmm. Because in many cases, the bully has his cohorts that are doing the deeds of the bully. Hey, go do this. Hey, go do that to this person. Hey, go, right? They are a leader. Why don't we take that bully and encourage their leadership skills and just reroute the energy in a different way? Why don't we take somebody like Hitler and say, or any dictator for that matter, and say, hey, can we just have a discussion about this for a while? Let's really talk about why, what, how. And then let's take the soldiers and go, okay, so you just killed somebody's kid because somebody else told you to. How did that make you feel?
Well, I forget the name of the book. There's a book about that these German soldiers talked about how they went from just being security guards to essentially killing pregnant naked women, like shooting them in the back of the head, and how it ripped them apart, but how they slowly made their way to that point. And that's the thing. And I think that's the thing that also we need to realize, and is that it doesn't happen overnight. It's a deterioration slowly of morals, ethics, of a paradigm, right? And like, as an example, like, a friend of mine, was like, hey, what if someone told you, what if the state said you had to, shut the power off at 6 o'clock? Would you walk around the neighborhood and report people who had their lights on after 6? And I'm like, well, first of all, I need more information than that, but no. Like, I'm not going to be patrolling my neighborhood for something like that, because that leads to, it starts out as, hey, that person's not wearing a mask. Hey, that person's, not doing whatever, to next thing you know, like you've already violated one principle. Next thing you know is like, oh, well, I got to report them now. I got to report them, and next thing you know, like, we're turning each other in to actually to eliminate the very thing that we're fighting for, that we think we're standing for. We're eliminating, and it folds in on of itself, and no one sees that when they're in it. We all have to be able to step back and go, oh, wait a minute, hold on, am I sucked into a paradigm that, and to me, and it's like the Matrix. It's like you're either in the Matrix or you wake up from it, and we all need a red pill.
It's cognitive dissonance at its finest.
Yep.
It's chemical infusion. I mean, what did Hitler do? He used fluoride in his water for his soldiers to control their minds. It's a neurotoxin and mind control substance. And guess what we do here in the United States of America? We fluoridate.
It's only a little bit of poison.
Here's the thing. I was watching an Air Force captain talk about the trails, the chemtrails, right? And he was saying it was a weather experiment that they're doing, and they're spraying lithium into the air because it's got a lot of angles, and so it reflects light differently. And so therefore it's a weather experiment. So he basically admitted that we're spraying lithium into the air. What do you know about lithium, sir? Probably a lot. It's a neurotoxin.
Yep.
It's a rat poison. It was used in 7-Up. That was the up in 7-Up to make you stupid and happy, basically, right? So
that one I didn't know. I knew cocaine was in Coke, but I didn't know lithium was okay.
7-Up had lithium. Dr. Pepper had heroin. This is or opium at the time, way back when, before heroin. So these were elixirs. These were things. But the point is that that's a rat poison, and it's used for people who are depressed to get, as an antidepressant. So what they're spraying in our air, okay, it's a weather experiment, no ill intent, but you happen to be spraying a substance that controls people's minds and makes them stupid and happy, thereby adding to cognitive dissonance.
It's crazy. Another thing that I don't know if this is 100% true, but that the tuning, like you've heard of the frequency 442?
Yes.
That was originally A440 Hitler created because it's just under, it creates a dissonance in the wavelengths. That 442 is like where it's natural. 440 is actually like bad to our frequencies, and that he was the one who changed it because he did these little subtle things that kind of messed with the way our brains functioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're doing a lot of that kind of thing, but this is the biggest lab in human history. Mm-hmm. Our country especially has become even bigger than the rest of the world. We've become the biggest scientific lab experiment in human history. And we are the rats who have no idea that we're in an experiment.
And actually, if you recall, if I recall correctly, they referred to COVID as an experiment a number of times at some press conferences.
Yeah.
Which again, I can give in benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were trying a methodology to deal with it. But, then if you go into the whole thing, what was that? There was a series of demos of like what a pandemic would do with some project, whatever, like a year or two before, with a bunch of people already preparing like what to do about a pandemic and how to deal with riots and like all the different outcomes. And it's interesting. It almost seems like we're being pushed, not to go down conspiracy theory, but it seems like we're being pushed in certain areas into like still by moving the line, keep moving the goalpost, no clarity, making people crazy, and then having them step up. And that's why the riots and stuff are happening as well, is because no one has any idea what the heck's going on. So they need to control something. So at least if I'm burning something down, I know that if I take this action, it's going to get a result, because I'm calling, I'm talking, I'm saying, hey, let's get something done. And no one's doing anything. They're just changing the goalposts and changing the mindset on what the criteria is to get to the next level anyway.
Yeah.
But people argue, like when people say that, I saw someone post like, okay, well the death rate now is like 0.000 like 003 of COVID. And someone's like, well, yeah, but say that to somebody who lost someone in their life. I'm like, okay.
Yes. Being insensitive about the fact that death happens in life.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that. That's horrible. I get it.
It is, but it is horrible to lose a family member or a friend. Absolutely.
I don't think anyone has ever suggested joy from it.
And there are a lot of things that kill a lot of people. And that statement alone is enough to inflame an entire group of people, saying there's a lot of things that kill a lot of people.
Right.
So here's the question is, it's a Queen song. Who wants to live forever anyway, right? Who wants to live forever anyway?
Well, so now you open up a whole new can of worms, and we're gonna have to wrap this up soon. Is now you get into your belief system around death, around your spirit, around, you know, like our course here, like, you know, is it, like, what does that mean to die? Like,
Right.
one would even argue, well, you're just changing form.
Right. That is the biggest thing driving the fear right now. Okay. Is the fear of death of a friend, a loved one, or yourself. And the fact of the matter is you can step off the curb and get hit by the bus and die. So what do we do about death? Not what do we do about, you know, it's like, what do we do about it? What do we say about it? What do, you know, I mean, what you just said was, well, you know, say that to somebody whose family member died. I mean, come on, you know, you're going to do that to, you're going to say that to somebody who's died in every war you supported, whose soldier, you know, whose family member is a soldier and died. You're going to say, well, look, don't, you know, that war.
Yeah. And that's like, it comes across as insensitive, and it's like, well, I can't change it. And like, it's such a challenging conversation, because by just acknowledging the existence of the facts that it happens, and like, I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of living in a cage. I'm afraid of living in a prison, and we're creating a prison to prevent ourselves from dying. Can't leave the house, can't talk to anybody, have to wear a mask, can't, you know, it's just like, well, what are we living now? Like, right. Where's that line? I go skydiving. Some people don't out. You're going to ban it because I might land on you?
Yes. Never go up in the sky because you might possibly one day land on me. Right. You have a GPS now and you can aim, and I know it. So yeah, no, you know, yes, we have to get some common sense back, some critical, you know, the critical thinking, common sense. Let's not be living in fear. Let's live in expectation of pleasure rather than expectation of fear. This is an NLP thing, you know, like you either live for your dreams or you live for your fears. You either live to create or you live to destroy. You live to, you know, it's like, what do you want to live for? Are we living? And how come it's so easy to make a bunch of people into muggles? I heard that because sheep, I was told, is very offensive to call people sheep. So we should call them muggles.
Ah, okay.
Harry Potter, less offensive. But, you know, why is it so easy to take people? And this is an NLP thing for you. Why is it so easy to control and manipulate the shit out of people?
Fear. We're wired for non-pain. Our pain sensors are outnumbered by our pleasure sensors by 10-1. So you get someone fearing for their life, feeling for their livelihood, fearing, like my mom is a good example. My mom's husband is in a home, and it's one of the ones that was at the, you know, the hot spot of all this, and they're having all these challenges, and now there might be Medicare fraud, Medicaid fraud, and all this crazy stuff. And my mom's like, no one will stand up. No one will say anything. It's crazy. I was like, well, Mom, think about it. Like, for you, you're in a different position. And I just wanted to point this out. She won't move him because she's completely scared of what it would take to move the person. You move her husband, like, you know, I was thinking, hey, come down here, you know, it's cheaper, it's everything, blah, blah. You could rent your houses, you'll be cash positive, and you could live off of, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, it's so overwhelming for her to even think about moving. And I said, so you can move him. You have resources. Most of the people in this center, their families don't have resources, so they don't want to rock the boat. They're afraid to say something because if they do, and then that center closes or they decide to take action, they're going to make your lives even more miserable. They would rather do nothing and accept those consequences than actually take action, because it would require an effort and it would send them into the unknown. It would send them into a sense of pain. So right now, people are getting comfortable, and I'm seeing it. People are getting comfortable doing nothing. Physics, things at rest tend to stay at rest. Things in motion tend to stay in motion. The longer this drags out, the longer people are going to be used to this new way. And I'm not talking about, I'm all for paradigm shifts and transforming. I'm not saying go back to an old way per se, but to keep this as the new way is not an improvement. And people are more afraid to go out. They're too used to just ordering in. They're too sedentary. And that's where we got to shake it up. And, how do we do that is, again, no mandates, let people make decisions, suffer some consequences of taking action, positive or negative.
Right.
And that's where we're lost, is that and that's how Hitler did it, by the way, is by putting people the level of disgust and disease, approaching people basically as a disease. And that's the only way that we were able to get this far. It could only happen with this disease because it made people fear for their lives. And because it was nebulous, it gives people that idea to say, hey, if you go out, you are endangering me. So now you become the enemy because you could be, if you don't wear a mask, you're endangering me. And it's a perfect setup for this kind of thing, because the argument is now, well, you're arguing for the ability to put me in harm's way. And it's crazy how it's gotten to that point. And it's amazing that people aren't stepping back, and enough people aren't stepping back. And it's coming, going, well, wait a minute. Let me actually think about that for a minute. Is that true? Is that actually true? And unfortunately, they're getting a lot of reinforcements of that belief and rewarded for yelling at someone who challenges it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just look at what is the agenda for censorship of ideas. And when you look at a big company like Google just recently got into the pharmaceutical business. There's Google Pharmaceutical. There's a reason. Why would YouTube censor any doctor saying anything about their experience and their knowledge and their practice? Because there's an agenda. Well, if you say there's an agenda to something, now it's a conspiracy theory, right? But an agenda doesn't have to be a malintent. It doesn't have to be something that, they're doing purposefully to cause. It's something that they're doing maybe just for shareholders.
Well, but there's cognitive dissonance where people go, like they'll go, oh yeah, I know big pharma is a scam. I know that they're all about money. They don't really care about people until now.
Did you hear what happened in the National Health Service in England?
No.
They were paying people $3,000 to take this new vaccine for Corona. The vaccine is killing people everywhere. And so now they're having to kind of.
How do you know? Was it on the news?
I have friends in London.
Okay, yeah, because
who have informed me, because one of them got one of the offers for $3,000 to take this vaccine. Beta test. Isn't beta test mean that it's still got a lot of bugs in it?
Yeah.
It's got a lot of bugs in it and you're putting it in your body. Isn't that kind of
killing all of the rats, the rabbits, and the monkeys we're doing this on? But maybe it's something in their ecosystem. Let's try it on people.
Right. It's exactly. So, the things that we will tolerate at the and increase our pain at the expense of life, right? And in the pursuit of avoiding pain. We're doing exactly to ourselves what they told us we would do, right? We are living in an NLP world.
Used against us. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and we know this, that a lot of politicians and attorneys, marketers all study human psychology, NLP, all of these things, and they know how they've mastered it for sure.
Here's the funny thing. When you were talking about your mom, and I know we've run a long time, But you were talking about your mom and how she doesn't want to move, and she has that. And I listen to Jim Rohn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Rohn says something. He's like, if we were a tree, when the nutrients run out of the place that we're at, we would die because we can't move. But not us. We're human beings. We could change the course of our lives at any moment. We could move west, we could move south, we could move north, we could change our environment. We don't have to live the next 5 years like we lived the last 5 years. We're human beings. We can change and adapt. And I'm thinking about that going, okay, but this society is so poised to stunt adaptation. And if you look at Darwin, it wasn't survival of the fittest, it was survival of the most adaptable. The people who can change the quickest and the fastest to incorporate a new world and a new life, a new experience and new environment. And so for people in general listening to this conversation that we're having, adapt. Take the time to figure out your life and what you truly want, and then adapt to become that person.
Mm-hmm.
Things you can drastically change the direction of your life. And he also says something like this: a plan or a blueprint, having a destination, a goal, is like having a rudder on a boat, right? You can navigate yourself. If you don't have the plan, you don't know where you want to go, you will arrive somewhere, but either you can arrive at a well-planned destination or an unplanned destination. And right now we're arriving at very unplanned personal destinations.
We're being led, I believe.
We are being led,
yeah.
But it's like a bullet being shot 2 degrees off and landing 100 degrees off where it goes.
Yep.
Projection and directory and trajectory are so important in life. Knowing who you are, knowing where you want to be, knowing what you want to do, and knowing when somebody else is fucking with it, so that you can step back and say, okay, I'm not going where I thought I was going. Let me redo my course. Let me create a new trajectory towards the place that I want to be. Let me reassess where I'm at. And that is a thing that we as a country need to do. And mostly we as individual people need to really think about what it is that we're doing, what's the trajectory we're on, and how are we being led versus how are we leading?
Amen, brother. So true. Well, dude, we've gone this crazy, awesome conversation. I've got 2 more sessions today. How can people get in touch with you? What would be, if they want to learn more, they want to connect with you? You've got your book coming up. You've got your podcast coming up. How can we learn more?
Yeah, so you could go to Amazon and search for A New Tomorrow. Ari Gronich is where that is at. It's a really cool book. Nice endorsements from Bob Proctor and Joe Vitale.
Great.
The Secret. And so you could go there. My podcast is launching on September 7th. It's called Create a New Tomorrow, and it's based on the book and some of these principles that you've heard here today. And you can reach me on pretty much any social media at arigronich.com. So Ari Gronich, Facebook, Ari Gronich, Twitter, Ari Gronich, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So pretty easy to find me. There are not any other on the planet named Ari Gronich.
How can
I don't know about how many Doug McGurks. I would imagine many.
A couple. That's why I might spell it a little differently. So that helps. There are a couple. It's funny. Interviewed David Meerman Scott. You know him, and he kept his middle name because there are plenty of David Scotts. It was like there's not any David Meerman Scotts, so it worked out really well. You search me, and I'm the only one. So yeah, that's why I kept the DUG for that same reason.
And you're a rock star, so DUG he works for a little bit of this.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was working with Billy Joel, he was like, yeah, if my name was Doug, I'd spell it that way too. I was like, yeah, cool. I guess that's an endorsement if I ever heard one.
Absolutely.
Awesome, brother. Well, I love you for who you are and who you aren't. Thank you so much for sharing your most valuable asset, your time and your wisdom. This has been an awesome chat, and obviously we could go a lot longer. But let's obviously keep the flow going. Let's keep helping people get to their next best place and open their eyes, open their hearts, open their minds, and hopefully have their spirit soar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to having you on my show as well. And, you know, if anybody is thinking that this conversation was pretty freaking awesome and they like to be a part of it, you know, check me out and we'll continue this conversation with you as well. Because I'm looking for game changers, people who are ready to, you know, I say fight the system a lot, but what I don't mean fight. I just mean let's shift.
Yeah.
Let's go up against what is and create what could be and get better results. So, you know, I love you. You've been a friend a long time. Unfortunately, we haven't seen each other in a while, but when we get together, we can't shut up. So
I love it when a plan comes together. Awesome, brother. Well, I will definitely see you shortly. And yeah, everyone get on board, subscribe to Create a New Tomorrow once it's launched. Continue subscribing to The Real Deal On, and we will see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Doug.
God bless. See you in a bit.